Win big in 2023 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code KNUCKLER, KNUCKLER, like R.A. Dickey. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. And for what's left of 2023 and the holidays coming up, it makes a great gift for the rotoballer in your life. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Check out that platform. They got free contests. They got paid contests. They're available in a bunch of different states. Use my referral link and my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. Hop in those Parlay Play Player Prop Fantasy contests. That is a great, exciting platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 118 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We're looking forward to UFC Vegas 83 this weekend. The card starts at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday because we've had a few fights canceled. So I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord from 5 to 6 p.m. doing the weekly DFS/sports betting Q&A. Show up. Let's talk about it. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA promotions and major boxing events. We got PFL Europe 4, One Fight Night 17, Octagon 50, Haney vs. Pro Grice this weekend. So follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I talk about MMA and make picks for all those major events. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and the Facebook page. Folks, we have 11 fights on Saturday. We're back in Las Vegas. Let's get into what these fights are going to be. Ryan dos Santos versus Talita Al-Ansar at strawweight. Tatsuro Taira, one of the most exciting fighters in all of the UFC to watch, let alone the flyweight division, taking on Carlos Hernandez. Stephanie Egger at bantamweight, taking on Luana Santos, 6-1 as a pro. At lightweight, a fight that was supposed to happen last week at UFC Austin, Steve Garcia versus Melquizel Costa. I already broke that down a little bit. Hyun Sung Park, 8-0, flyweight against Shannon Ross out of Australia. Kenan Song in a welterweight fight against Kevin Jousset of France. Andre Muniz against Jung Young Park at middleweight. Nasrat Haqparast, 155-pound fight against Jamie Malarkey. Bantamweight. God. Weird. But it's Sumata Hari versus a staple of the flyweight division for many, many years, Tim Elliott. The co-main event, a light heavyweight matchup between number 9 and number 14 in the world, respectively. According to Tapology.com, that is Anthony Lionheart Smith against Khalil Roundtree Jr. And the main event, a bantamweight banger.
Break out the red panties.
Between Yadong Song and Chris Gutierrez. We were supposed to get, Sumata Hari versus Alan Nascimento. We were supposed to get Road to UFC fights on this card. Those are the main cancellations. Yeah, but honestly, this card's pretty awesome. Even though the main event, there is quality all throughout this card. And I love that, take the namesake of the title of this episode, for instance. Multiple guys with the last name Park fighting out of South Korea. Love to see it. Flyweight talent is going to be on display on Saturday. And, for those of you that double up as college football fans, there won't be near as much college football, just the Army-Navy game, FCS D2 and D3 action to compete with. So, let's get into it. Ryan dos Santos, 14-6, 28 years old, coming to us from Invicta. She is going to be the minus 166 favorite. Talita Al-Ansar, the plus 140 underdog. So, Ryan dos Santos has only lost since June of 2021 is Denise Gomez in the Contender Series, August of last year. It's hard to tell from a lot of her professional record, She's got a good amount of fights under her belt. But, I think most importantly, her last 2 fights against Katie Saul in Invicta. Katie Saul, friend of the podcast, I have love for Katie Saul, and she is a really, really solid, and that was at atom weight for Rayon dos Santos. Won that by unanimous decision. And, even though Katie Saul's record is 5-5, or was at the time, that's misleading because Katie Saul was one of the best atom weights out there. She could hold the Invicta belt one day. And then, most recently, May of this year, unanimous decision win over Jillian DeCourcy. That is a high-quality slew of wins. Both were at atom weight, though. And so that's a different thing when you're fighting at atom weight and Invicta, and you're trying to hop up to straw weight to compete at this level. Tylita Al-Ansar, the problem child, 4-0-1, 33 years old. Now, she 3 wins in a row in Titan FC and LFA. She had a draw in the Contender Series against Stephanie Luciano. A unanimous decision win over Kelsey Arneson in LFA 156, April of this year. And the 2 submission victories by rear naked choke in Titan FC. Now, the problem is, over her last 3 wins, not the draw against Luciano, last 3 wins, her opponent's combined record is 4-4. So not a lot of experience between those fighters. So, look, I think that the most logical decision here is probably Rayon dos Santos by decision. Rayon dos Santos, I think, has beaten a higher quality of competition. More experienced fighters. The Katie Saul and the Jillian DeCourcy wins alone, even though those were at atom weight, I think that she has enough success at straw weight to tell me that she can handle Tylita Al-Ansar and can hold off a submission over the course of 3 rounds. I think Rayon dos Santos wins this fight 65 to 70 times out of 100. Give me Santos by decision plus 165. Next up, we got Tatsuro Taira and Carlos Hernandez. Hold on, give me 1 second. And Tatsuro Taira, rightfully the minus 575 favorite. And he's been like that pretty much every fight that he's had at this level in the UFC. Carlos Hernandez, the plus 425 underdog. Starting off with Carlos Hernandez, he is actually 3-1 in the UFC with solid win. A Contender Series split decision. A split decision over Victor Altamirano where he did outstrike him 84-79, 2 takedowns to 1. His only loss was a submission to Alan Nascimento, which is very forgivable. And then last time out, he beats Dennis Bondar by unanimous decision, 102-76 on the strikes, 2 takedowns each. That was in June of this year. Tatsuro Taira, on the other hand, born in the year 2000. I didn't know they made people after 1999. Winner of 4 in a row at the UFC level. 2 decisions, 2 submissions. This guy is so dangerous. Tatsuro Taira is fireworks every time that he's out there. Flyweight, this guy really has true star potential. And it's with guys like him and Starboy, who you all know that I'm a big fan of, at least with his performances in the octagon. I think that it shows that the star power of the flyweight division is increasing by the day. Taira, over the last year, first of all, the CJ Vergara armbar win, October of 2022. Then a first-round triangle armbar over Jesus Aguilar, last time out against Edgar Chairez, a unanimous decision, outstriking him 61-25 with 2 takedowns. He did get knocked down once by Edgar Chairez. Yeah, here's the thing. I think the most logical, I don't want to bet a straight-up victor here. If I did, obviously it'd be Carlos Hernandez, just because there's actually a reward there, and Carlos Hernandez is 3-1 in the UFC. Now, Tatsuro Taira, I think, is better than Alan Nascimento, or I think that that's fair to say. Taira, by submission, is plus 100. I think that's the best value you're going to get on a method of victory pick here. Tatsuro Taira is going to be very, very popular in DFS, too. I would expect to see him north of $20 in FanDuel, or at least 19, and, 8,900 or above in DraftKings. Taira by submission plus 100, I think, makes the most sense. Then I would go Taira by decision plus 175. Hernandez by decision, though, plus 750. I don't hate that number either. So that's they're bringing Taira along at a pretty steady pace. I think you could, if you wanted to, move him along faster. But there's also guys like Amir Albazi and Muhammad Makayev that they are trying to move along at a faster pace. We're in a state in the flyweight division where the last 4 flyweight title fights have all been between the same 2 guys. And we're only, that was, before Moreno and Pantoja. So, I think that they're trying to mix it up and get some of the other younger talent up there. Tatsuro Taila can be brought along at a more steady pace. But, I think this will be a win at least equal to, if not greater than, the quality of wins that Tatsuro Taira has already gotten in the UFC. I think Tatsuro Taira wins this fight 75, 80 times out of 100, probably closer to 75. So Carlos Hernandez makes sense at plus 425, but I would kind of stay away from that. I'd go more for a more specific outcome here, even though I think there's a few possibilities. This one I think is more of a DFS play. I think that this, as far as betting, this one's a sit back and enjoy more so. But those are the different ways that I think that this fight ends. Next up, a women's bantamweight matchup between Luana Santos and Stephanie Egger. Stephanie Egger, the plus 130 underdog. Luana Santos, the minus 155 favorite. Let's start off with Stephanie Egger. And by the way,
don't do this. You cannot do this,
I actually picked the wrong sound drop.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
Even though Stephanie Egger is 3-3 in the UFC, technically, her wins are over Shanna Young, Jessica Rose Clark, and Eileen Perez. Eileen at least has won 2 in a row. That's her best win for sure. Lost 2 of her last 3, though, and by first-round submission, Amira Bueno Silva and Irina Alekseeva. Luana Santos won her first fight in the UFC in pretty dominant fashion over Juliana Miller, the Ultimate Fighter winner, August of this year by first-round knockout, outstriking her 63-24 in the first round. When you look at who Stephanie Egger has lost to, is Luana Santos closer to Irina Alekseeva or the likes of, Jessica Rose Clark, She hasn't been TKO'd yet, is the issue. It's hard to pick an outcome of victory here for Luana Santos. I don't have faith in Stephanie Egger to be this quality of a fighter. I think Luana Santos is well on her way up. She is 12 years younger than Stephanie Egger. That is not a favorable age difference. And statistically, those age differences have mattered in UFC fights over the last few years. So Santos, minus 155. I think she wins this fight 65 to 70 times out of 100. I think minus 155 is a really good bet. And I don't necessarily want to go, by TKO for Luana Santos because Juliana Miller is the kind of fighter that will give up a lot of strikes. And I don't think that is necessarily Stephanie Egger's style. And, Santos does have 3 submission wins. If you're going with a victory for Luana Santos, if you want to pick a method, go by submission plus 300. And I think if you're going Stephanie Egger, that's a tough one too, because Stephanie Egger is only one inside the distance. I don't know, maybe you go Stephanie Egger by decision. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, though, plus 275. And I don't think that the number on Stephanie Egger at plus 130 is right. So I don't think there's any situation where I would have money on Stephanie Egger here. Regardless of how I feel about maybe some uncertainty about Luana Santos. And even though Stephanie Egger, I might give her a little bit more flack than she might deserve with her record and who she's lost to. I think that Luana Santos is a step above here. Next up at lightweight, Steve Garcia and Melquizal Costa. Now, Garcia, the plus 215 underdog. Costa, the minus 265 favorite. As you recall, last time out, I had some favorable things to say about Steve Garcia. Because, the question is, the gap between Costa's loss to Thiago Moises by second-round rear naked choke, in which he was competitive but gave up 4 takedowns to Thiago Moises, and the fight where he landed 100 strikes and 3 takedowns over Austin Lingo, July of this year. He fought twice in the UFC this year. Steve Garcia, on the other hand, 4 years older. He will have a 4-inch reach advantage, winner of 3 out of his last 4, including all knockout victories, 2 in the second round against Charlian Taveras and last time out against Shailen Nurdon Becky. And then a first-round knockout victory over Chase Hooper, where he landed 3 knockdowns October of 2022. The activity level has been concerning for Steve Garcia for sure, and his losses to Luis Pena and Mahashate leave some to be desired. You know, like, I see that, like, Costa by decision probably makes the most sense. You know, I don't know if Costa will be able to put Garcia away like he did Austin Lingo. I think the two, methods of victory that maybe make the most sense for Costa are by decision, which is plus 320, and then by knockout, plus 140. So that seems to be the way that Vegas thinks that fight's going to end. For Steve Garcia, I think you probably go by knockout because that's how all 4 of his UFC fights that were victories have ended. Garcia by TKO knockout plus 350. That is probably the best ratio of reward to probability that you're getting on this fight. Hit it. Ow! Next up, we've got Young Sung Park and Shannon Ross in a flyweight matchup. Shannon Ross is the plus 440 underdog. Young Sung Park, the minus 600 favorite. Let's start with Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross has lost all 3 fights that he's had at the UFC level, including the Contender Series, all by knockout. To Vinicius Salvador, Clayton Rodriguez, and Jesus Aguilar. Young Sung Park, on the other hand, 2 road to UFC victories, 1 first-round knockout over Jeremiah Sirigar, a first-round rear naked choke over Top Noi Kiram. That was October of 2022. And then February of this year, 3rd-round rear naked choke over Sunguk Choi. He didn't land a bunch of strikes against Top Noi Kiram. He landed, in a combined 67 against Sirigar and Choi. But, one of those fights only went to, that didn't make it out of the first round. I think that, first of all, I think Young Sung Park and Steve Garcia, by the way, to go back a little bit, I think he at least wins 40 of these fights out of 100. Maybe even 45. He's been really competitive. We don't know that much about Costa, really, based on his level of competition in the UFC. So plus 215 can make a lot of sense. To go back to Park and Shannon Ross, minus 600, plus 440 for Shannon Ross. 3 losses in a row at the UFC against a guy that has not lost, even though 2 of those fights are in the road to UFC level. I'm not touching a straight-up victor here. And Park, inside the distance, is minus 330. I do not love that at all. What I will say is, I don't know. I think you don't go inside the distance minus 330 unless you're tying together a parlay in some instance. Park is going to be very popular in DFS, and I recommend that you go with him because I think that he does win this fight about 85 to 90 times out of 100, maybe even more. Park by submission, plus 165. Park by TKO knockout, plus 110. I think that that's a 50-50 split because at a certain point when you're that overmatched, whether the way that the fight ends, it can kind of be a flip of a coin. So what the hell? I think you go Park by submission plus 165. Then I go Park by TKO knockout plus 110. Next up, we've got a welterweight matchup between Song Kenan and Kevin Jousset out of France. Kenan Song is the plus 130 underdog. Jousset, the minus 155 favorite. So let's start with Jousset. He won his first fight in the UFC, a first-round rear naked choke victory over Kiefer Crosby. He was getting outstruck 39-29, but he landed the takedown, led to a first-round submission in September of this year. Born in 1993, 75-inch reach. Kenan Song will be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. He is 3 years older. A lot of experience, though, for Kenan Song. Going back to 2017, the activity level hasn't been great, but at least he's fought twice already in 2023. And it's hard to blame him too much for several of his losses. His only 3 losses in the UFC because he is 5-3 in the UFC. Those 3 losses came to Alex Morono, which he was outstruck 98-61. Respectable performance for sure. Max Griffin, who finished him by first round knockout, and Ian Gary, who finished him by third-round knockout, but not before Kenan Song landed 55 strikes, 2 takedowns to 0, and 1 knockdown. Ian Gary, I got to have Connor Bone Sloan on the show. We can talk a little bit about what's going on in that guy's life over the last couple of months. Kenan Song is coming off a win by unanimous decision August of this year. He did get outstruck by Rolando Bedoya on UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Korean Zombie, 112-75, but he landed a knockdown. His strikes were more meaningful in that fight. That's why he came away with the unanimous decision victory. When you break down his UFC wins, 2 by decision, the other 3 were by TKO knockout. And, let's, just to take a deeper look back at Kevin Jousset, 9-2 as a professional, 30 years old, 4 wins by decision, 1 by submission, 4 by TKO knockout. His last loss before he came into the UFC was by decision. His only, and this is the crazy thing, too. Back in October of 2019, the only time he was finished in his professional career was at Eternal MMA 48, doctor stoppage due to a cut at the hands of Jack Della Maddalena. I don't think that's Kenan Song's game. I don't think he's going to be able to do the damage to stop the fight or to put it away like Jack Della Maddalena. I don't necessarily know if this fight's going to end, but I do think this is at least a 50-50 fight. I might even call this 55 out of 100 for Kenan Song. So plus 130, hit it. And for Kenan Song, I'd say the most likely route of victory is by decision, plus 350. Then I might go TKO knockout, plus 320, but I think plus 350 is actually the much better number. For Jousset, I don't know, let's say Jousset has 4 wins by KO, TKO. That's plus 225 for him. That's not a great number, considering that I think that him being the favorite is overblown in this matchup. So I'm riding all Kenan Song in that fight. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup between Jung Young Park and Andre Muniz. Muniz is the plus 142 underdog. Jung Young Park, the minus 170 favorite. Let's start with Andre Muniz. Loser of 2 in a row. Before that, he had only won in the UFC. He was on a great run. Just to go back to September of 2020, he had 3 armbar finishes in the first round in a row against Bartosz Fabinski, Jacare Souza, and Eric Anders. And then he gets a unanimous decision victory over Uriah Hall in a fight that made no sense. A combined 23 strikes landed, 17 from Muniz, 4 takedowns. Then he lost 2 in a row, got finished by a third-round rear naked choke against Brendan Allen, and a second-round TKO against Paul Craig. Those both came in fights this year. Jung Young Park, on the other hand, will be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage. He is 1 year younger than Andre Muniz. Jung Young Park is the Iron Turtle. He has won 4 fights in a row. In fact, he has won 7 of his last 8 fights. Wins over Marc-Andre Barriault, John Phillips, Stefan Nchukwu, all by decision. Gets knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez October of 2021. Then a split decision victory over Eric Anders, where he landed 105 strike to Anders 65. Got taken down 3 times. Then 3 submission victories in a row, all by rear naked choke in the second round against Joseph Holmes, in the first round against Dennis Tia Llewellyn, and in the second round against Albert Duraev, July of this year. He has 2 wins in 2023. It is hard for me to go against Jung Young Park at this point. Andre Muniz was on a hell of a run from September of 2020 to July of 2022. The losses to Allen and Craig, it's hard to hold those too much against him. Those are really tough fighters, dynamic fighters. But Jung Young Park is just super consistent. His only 2 losses are to the likes of Gregory Rodriguez and Anthony Hernandez. I think that there is a very solid tier that Jung Young Park occupies in the UFC middleweight division. And at this point, I don't think that he's really capable of going too much further past that. But I do think that he is beyond the likes of Andre Muniz. Jung Young Park wins this fight 65, 70 times out of 100. Minus 170, I don't hate it. I think the more important point is that I don't like Andre Muniz enough to go plus 142. And let's go Jung Young Park by submission, plus 400. Then Park by decision, plus 320. And then, what the hell? I would then just go Andre Muniz inside the distance. That's plus 250. That's a solid number there. Oh, boy. This is a fun card. surprisingly, it's not going to get the credit for that. And we only have 4 fights left at this point. It's going to be a quick night, but they are starting it at 7:30. Next up, we got a bantamweight matchup between Sue Matahari and Tim Elliott. Love Tim Elliott. Sue Matahari is the plus 105 underdog. Tim Elliott, the minus 125 favorite. And folks, you know, every time Tim Elliott fights,
break out the red panties.
But I would say to Sue Matahari,
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
especially for a guy that is older and has fought at the flyweight division for pretty much his entire career and now is coming up to 135 pounds. Let's talk about Tim Elliott first. Y'all know that I was heartbroken last time out. I picked Tim Elliott, I think, as a plus 320 underdog against Muhammad Mokaev at UFC 294, October 21st of 2023. And he landed 30 strikes to Muhammad Mokaev's 14. Got taken down 3 times, but landed a takedown of his own, tried a couple of submissions. And if he had survived that 3rd round, instead of getting arm triangle choked, he was going to win on the judges' scorecards. Absolutely heartbreaking. Before that, he had won 4 out of 5 against Ryan Benoit, Jordan Espinoza, Tagir Ulanbekov, and Victor Altamirano, using a really good mixture of mixing it up with volume and takedown and in his strikes, just outworking his opponents. The only loss in that stretch of time was a unanimous decision loss to Matheus Nicolau, October of 2021. Tim Elliott was born in 1986. His first UFC fight was May of 2012 against John Dodson. Was on The Ultimate Fighter, had a really close fight with Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. He's been in forever, and though he's done a lot of losing, he is a guy that in any given night, at least in the flyweight division, this guy can beat anybody. He is just that kind of dog. Sue Matahari will have a 6-inch reach advantage. He was born 10 years later than Tim Elliott. And for that reason, you got to tell Sue Matahari.
One comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
And Sue Matahari lost his UFC debut to a seasoned vet and a guy like Luis Smolka by 2nd-round armbar in November of 2018. He's fought once per year since then and is yet to fight in 2023. That is concerning, and it's surprising because I feel like you see him on cards a lot more. And let's actually check here, because that is, I think that he might have had a few fights canceled in the meantime. Yeah, Sue Matahari was supposed to fight Tim Elliott back in June of 2021. He was supposed to fight Manel Kape back in April of 2022. He was supposed to fight Alan Nascimento this weekend. And it's been Tim Elliott stepping in to replace him. And, in that meantime, Sue Matahari, he had a 3-fight winning streak going against Andre Sukamantha. Sukamantha. There we go. He landed 93 strikes against Andre. And I think it's just for one, some of that volume striking and a little bit of his knockout power that I think Sue Matahari might be a decent value in DFS this week. I think Tim Elliott could be a decent value in DFS this week as well. But that 3-fight winning streak, a unanimous decision over Andre, a 1st-round knockout TKO against Malcolm Gordon, November of 2020, unanimous decision victory over Zaruk Adashev, January of 2021, outlanding him 50-28. There were no other statistics compiled. And then the last fight that he was actually in was a 2nd-round triangle choke loss to Matt Schnell in what was an absolute banger, a wild fight, a fight that only these two, Sue Matahari and Matt Schnell, could have been in. Matahari outlanded Schnell 58-47, got a knockdown, but got taken down twice and succumbed to the superior grappling of Matt Schnell. The real thing is, I do think you have to favor Tim Elliott, even at bantamweight, just a little bit. Tim Elliott, I think, wins this fight 55 to 60 times out of 100. Just because I think he's beaten the better guys, even of late, even with all the losses, even at bantamweight. The problem is the age difference, though. I keep an eye on this line, because Sue Matahari plus 105, if that goes up at all, if people start betting Tim Elliott and that line moves up for Sue Matahari, take it. Because a guy that is that much younger, fighting a guy that is stepping up in weight, no less, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just don't know if I love plus 105 when we just don't have a good sample size of Sumatahari beating opponents at the Tim Elliott level. Tim Elliott, I think by decision makes good sense. Let's see. All of Tim Elliott's wins, dating back, his last finish inside the distance was December of 2017. So Elliott by decision they don't even have odds for it yet. That's weird. But I like that. And, Elliott hasn't been knocked out. Let's see. Elliott has never been TKO'd in the UFC. That is wild. For Sumatahari, especially with the reach advantage he's going to have, let's go ahead and say that he outstrikes Tim Elliott, keeps him off the ground, keeps himself off of his back enough. And I think that Sumatahari by decision is actually the best prop of this fight. I'm kind of leaning soon now from a betting perspective. My heart will be with Tim Elliott. It's just hard when you're that much older than dude and you're stepping up in weight. I think that Sumatahari can really do some good damage on the feet. Damage that Muhammad Mokaev was not able to do. And Tim Elliott is a weird puzzle to figure out, so that is going to be a real test for Sumatahari. Next up, we got Jamie Malarkey and Nasrat Haqparast. Jamie Malarkey will be the plus 160 underdog. Nasrat, the minus 192 favorite. Let's start off with Flim Flam Malarkey. That's not his nickname, but that's one I'm going to try to get to stick. So, dating back to May of 2021, this guy's been super active, has fought at least twice from, I'm going to say that again. Fought twice in 2021 and 2022, going 3-1 in that time span. Now he's fought 3 times in 2023, from February to September. So those wins came over Kama Worthy by first-round knockout. Devontae Smith by second-round knockout. He lost a second-round knockout to Jalen Turner, who has gone on to bigger and better things since then. A split decision victory where he landed 96 strikes against Michael Johnson July of 2022. A unanimous decision victory over Francisco Prada February of this year. 59-20 under the striking for Malarkey, and 3 takedowns to 0. The loss in 2023 came by second-round knockout to Muhammad Naimov. He outlanded Naimov 39-28 on the feet, or at least, in the striking. Got his 3 takedowns, but got knocked down and got finished. Then his last time out against John McDessie, it was a close fight, 88-83 on the striking, but Malarkey does walk away with the unanimous decision victory, taking all 3 judges' scorecards 29-28. So then we got Nasrat. He will be at a 2-inch reach disadvantage. These guys were born in 1994 and 1995, respectively. Nasrat Haqparast had to fight some really tough guys. Let's go back even, because he's been in the UFC since October of 2017. Wins over Mark Dikeshe, Thibault Guti, Joaquim Silva. A loss by first-round knockout to Drew Dober. Understandable. Then 2 straight unanimous decision victories where he landed a combined 203 strikes against Alexander Munoz and Rafa Garcia. Then he had to fight the likes of Dan Hooker and Bobby Green. He landed, over 100 strikes in those 2 fights combined, unfortunately. Dan Hooker landed 3 takedowns against him. That's ugly. His last 6 fights have been unanimous decision results one way or the other. And the 3 before, all but 2 of his UFC fights have ended in unanimous decision victories one way or another. But he lost that fight to Bobby Green. Bobby Green landed 188 strikes to Nasrat 76. But he is on a 2-fight winning streak. He's only fought once this year, and he fought a year apart. September 3rd, 2022, unanimous decision victory over John McDessie. He won that a little bit more well-rounded. McDessie outstruck him 73-64, 2 takedowns to 0 for Nasrat, and he got a knockdown. And then his last time out, September of this year, he took on Ultimate Fighter alum Landon Quinones, won by unanimous decision in a high-volume striking matchup, 171-148. Dude, Am I crazy? these days for Nasrat, I think, like, the losses are only to really good lightweights for sure. At least, his last 3 losses. His wins are solid. There's a lot of high volume. I think you're going to want, one of these guys in DFS. I think they'll be, in that $16 to $18 range. And I could justify both of them. But I think this is a 50-50 fight. I think there's going to be a lot of strikes thrown in this, and I think it's going to be about who lands the better strikes. Nasrat has landed takedowns. Jamie Malarkey has landed takedowns. I think that this is going to come down to who lands the better shot. This is a 50-50 fight. Give me Jamie Malarkey plus 160. Hit it. Ow! And, I think Jamie Malarkey, gets it done by decision. I think it's proven really tough to put Nasrat away. The only guy who's been able to do it is Drew Dober, who was doing that to a lot of people over that stretch of time. Give me Jamie Malarkey by decision. That is plus 350. I love it. Nasrat Haqparast by decision. That is plus 110. So I go in that order. Malarkey by decision plus 350. Haqparast by decision plus 110. Malarkey is one of my favorite underdog picks of this card. But because I think this fight is going to be awesome. And I think that it's going to be anybody's fight, and it's going to come down to who lands the best shot. Next up, we are to the co-main event of the evening. A light heavyweight matchup between top 15 205-pounders, according to Tapology.com. Anthony Smith, number 9 in the world, 37-18 as a professional against Khalil Roundtree Jr., the number 14 light heavyweight in the world. Let's start with Anthony Smith. Because Anthony Smith is the plus 170 underdog in this fight. Khalil Roundtree, the minus 205 favorite. Friend of the podcast over at Blood Money MMA Bets. He got Anthony Smith at plus 205. Anthony Smith.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
Why do people hate this guy so much? I don't understand it. Was it the stretch of time where he just got battered by Glover and battered by Alexander Rakic? Is that what it was? Because when Anthony Smith loses to better competition, it looks bad. But he's only fought really good fighters. And, he lost those 2 in a row to Magomed Ankalaev by second round TKO. Magomed Ankalaev, on any given night in this light heavyweight division might end up as the champion just because he is, rock solid. He's just boring. And so he might not get that opportunity for a bit. And then lost the unanimous decision to Johnny Walker. And that's been a different Johnny Walker. It's been a better Johnny Walker that we've seen over the last year. And he's coming off a win August of this year, a split decision victory over Ryan Spann. 91-59 on the striking for Smith and a takedown. So statistically, it favored Anthony Smith. I think you're going to want someone in this fight in DFS too. I think that Anthony Smith is probably going to be in the $14, $15 range, which is a crazy bargain. If you get him $16 or under, you're getting an absolute bargain. Anthony Smith is just a guy that people want to continue to count out, even though he has only fought absolute killers dating back to June of 2000. No, even further back. February 2018, and that's if you're not counting, Hector Lombard for what he was at the time. He's fought Thiago Santos, Rashad Evans, Shogun Rua, Volkan Odesmer, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Glover, Alexander Rakic, wins over Devin Clark, Jimmy Crute, and Ryan Spann. He's beaten Ryan Spann twice. Now let's move on to Khalil Roundtree. Only 2 years younger. They have a 76-inch reach apiece. And Anthony Smith is actually 3 inches taller. Khalil Roundtree is on a 4-fight winning streak. And let's talk about that. Because he had the 2 losses from 2019 to 2021 to Ian Kudalaba and Marcin Prachnio. Before that, it had really been a very middle-tier run for Khalil Roundtree. Wins over Paul Craig, Gokhan Saki, Eric Anders. But, losses to the likes of Johnny Walker. A no contest with Mikhail Alexijuk. A loss to Tyson Pedro. Now he's on this 4-fight winning streak from September 2021, then March of 2022, October of 2022, and 1 fight this year, August of 2023. August 12th to be exact, the fight night between Vicente Luque and Rafael Dos Anjos. Wins over by second round knockout, 2 in a row, over Modestas Bukauskas and Carl Roberson. Okay? Solid. I will call that solid. Then the split decision win over Dustin Jacoby. And guess what?
but I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
Not that it was a bad performance, okay? But watching that fight, I could watch that 100 times, and 99 times out of 100, I'm saying Dustin Jacoby won that fight 29-28. Justin Jacoby outstruck him 120 to 85, and just round by round, that was a fight that I felt Dustin Jacoby had. And then last time out, he gets a first-round knockout over Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus, who has lost 4 fights in a row, hasn't won since September of 2021. It's hard to know what a win over Chris Daukaus even means at this point. Don't sleep on Anthony Smith, folks. That would be a massive mistake. He's just a guy that I've seen on the internet. People just love to make fun of. I don't get it. I don't get where the hatred for Anthony Smith comes from. Dude, he's really good when you've only had to fight good people. And Khalil Roundtree, as impressive as this winning streak has been, you've only had to fight really middle-tier people. So, on that, I think Anthony Smith wins this fight 55 times out of 100. Give me Anthony Smith plus 170. Hit it. Ow! How he does it, I don't know. I would be inclined to say that, Anthony Smith wins it by decision. That's at plus 700. Inside the distance, plus 300. Maybe that makes a little more sense. Maybe that makes a little more sense. That's hard to tell, actually. But Khalil Roundtree, I think that if you think he wins this fight, too, I think you go Roundtree by TKO knockout. That is minus 135. That is the prop I would go with. I think that's probably the most certain prop. If I'm going with a fighter and I'm going with a method of victory, I'm going by Roundtree TKO knockout minus 135. It makes him actually worth betting on. If you're betting Khalil Roundtree, you bet TKO knockout minus 135. I don't think this fight is going to decision. I think that if he actually is the better fighter than Anthony Smith, it will prove, and it will prove quickly, and the damage will accumulate quickly on Anthony Smith. But keep in mind, this is a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight like Anthony Smith is used to being in. So I think that that's going to favor Anthony Smith. Obviously, that hasn't been all of his fights, but he's been in plenty of fight night main events for sure. Off it alone, the fact that Anthony Smith is the underdog, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. This is a different level of competition for both of these guys, but in the wrong directions if you're favoring Khalil Roundtree. He very easily could end up winning this fight. Anthony Smith has taken a lot of damage. He's got 55 professional fights at a really high level. That damage accumulates. But every time that we've counted him out, he's always given us a reason to count him back in. And he's coming off a win against the likes of Ryan Spann, who, has also only fought killers. So I just don't see where the hatred of Anthony Smith comes from. And I don't think Khalil Roundtree was the better fighter against Dustin Jacoby. And now, folks, we're to the main event of the evening.
Break out the red panties.
It is a bantamweight matchup between Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez. Number 7 and number 17 in the world at bantamweight, according to Tabology.com, respectively. Chris Gutierrez is the plus 300 underdog. Song Yadong, the minus 380 favorite. Let's start with Chris Gutierrez. It's been an impressive run. He's only lost once since he debuted in the UFC November 30, 2018 against Raoni Barcelos. Since then, wins over the likes of Vince Morales. That was a dominant win. Andre Ewell by unanimous decision. And by the way, Andre Ewell, friend of the podcast, Mr. Highlight. Felipe Colares by split decision where he landed 96 strikes. I think you're going to want, obviously, one of these guys in DFS, and I think Gutierrez is probably going to be, in the $13 to $15 range. No, maybe even 12 to 14. That makes a lot more sense just based on the way the handicapping is looking. But just the volume of the striking that he has been able to land, I think that makes a lot of sense. Chris Gutierrez, the best wins have been a second-round knockout over Dana Batjaral, a first-round knockout over Frankie Edgar. Then he lost April of this year. So, and that seems like forever ago. But he outstruck Pedro Munoz 77 to 60, but he got knocked down by Pedro Munoz. Ultimately, Pedro Munoz strikes ended up meaning more throughout the course of that fight. and it was 30-27 for Pedro Munoz on every single judge's scorecards. He is coming off a victory October 14, 2023 by unanimous decision over Alatang Ali. Outstruck him 110-38, got taken down twice. Song Yadong, on the other hand, so he was born in 1997, December 2nd, by the way. Happy 5-day belated birthday to the Kung Fu Kid. Chris Gutierrez, born in 1991. They each have a 67-inch reach. It has been a much higher level of competition for Song Yadong, and that dates back, to he also has a win over Vince Morales, November 24th of 2018, outstriking him 79-74, 2 takedowns to 0. A first-round knockout of Alejandro Perez, a draw with Cody Stamann, and by the way, Chris Gutierrez did have a draw with Cody Durden. A draw with Cody Stamann, and that was because, Cody Stamann landed 5 takedowns. That was a majority decision draw. A win over Marlon Chito Vera, May of 2020, where he landed 101 strikes to Chito's 92. Even though he got taken down twice, still got a unanimous decision victory. A unanimous decision loss to Kyler Phillips. He outstruck him 67-59, but couldn't stay off his back. 3 takedowns for Kyler. Then, August of 2021 starts a stretch of 4 wins out of 5 fights against a really high level of competition. Split decision victory over Casey Kenny, where he landed 116 strikes. A win over Julio Arce by second-round knockout, November of 2021. A first-round knockout over Marlon Moraes, March of 2022. Hard to know exactly what that means because Moraes was getting knocked out a lot in that stretch of time. And then his loss in that stretch was to Corey Sandhagen, September of 2022, a guy who I think on any given night could be the bantamweight champion, the best bantamweight in the world. So I'm very willing to forgive that. Then he comes back, bounces back, UFC Fight Night, Song versus Simone, outstrikes Ricky Simone 105-60, knocks him down twice, weathers the storm of 2 takedowns from Ricky Simone, gets the KO TKO in the 5th. And, Chris Gutierrez, my problem is that he has not been KO'd, TKO'd in the UFC. And Song Yadong his only finishes have come by knockout, except for his UFC debut, which he won by a first-round guillotine choke over Barak Kondare. So, I think if you're going Song by any means inside the distance, I think obviously you're going Yadong by TKO knockout plus 120. But by decision is plus 150. I actually think that's the better number. That is where I disagree with my friends over at Blood Money MMA bets. So I would go Song Yadong by decision plus 150. I think Song Yadong does win this fight 75 times out of 100. I'm not touching a straight-up victor here. I don't think the number is good enough on Gutierrez. Gutierrez has good wins, and maybe even Song Yadong wins this fight even closer to 85. Anywhere from 75 to 85. There's a lot of question marks with the guys that these guys have beaten and the guys that they've lost to. Now, with Chris Gutierrez, if I'm picking a method of victory, probably going by decision. Because I don't think that he puts him away like Corey Sandhagen was able to do, and Corey Sandhagen was only able to do it in the 4th round. I think that if you're going Chris Gutierrez, go ahead and, juice up your potential rewards there. By decision is plus 550. Ultimately, I'm going Song Yadong by decision plus 150, and then I would go Song Yadong by TKO knockout plus 120. That is going to be a fight where if that goes into the 4th round, there will be over 200 strikes landed combined between the two guys. So you're going to want either Chris Gutierrez or Song Yadong, depending on how you're building your lineup. And there's not a ton of options this weekend. There's a lot of guys that you're absolutely going to want in your lineup. And so there's going to be a lot of interesting DFS variations this weekend. But I could see, in different variations, wanting either Chris Gutierrez or Song Yadong. But, folks, that is it for episode 118 of RotoBallers official MMA podcast. Tap that. We are looking forward to UFC Vegas 83 this weekend.
Break out the red panties.
And again, the card starts at 7:30 p.m. So I will be in the RotoBaller MMA DFS MMA Discord doing the DFS/sports betting Q&A from 5 to 6 p.m. on Saturday. Be there. or you're a square, come out. Let's talk about this fight night card. Let's close out 2023 with some winning ways. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA promotions and events, major boxing events. And we got PFL Europe commencing at noon on Friday. One Fight Night 17 going down Friday night. Octagon 50. Devin Haney is fighting Regis Prograis. Montana Love is fighting this weekend. Mio Yoshida versus Bonnie Bridges. So there's some good boxing matches this weekend too. So if you want to see what my takes are on anything in the world of MMA and my picks for those major MMA and boxing events, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast. That's on the Facebook page, the Spotify, and the YouTube channel. Folks, I've got some really interesting interlude episodes coming out, including with Tough 29, runner-up Brady Highstand, one of the most exciting bantamweights in all of the UFC. That'll be coming out soon. Can't wait for you guys to hear that. Thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great weekend. We got this done well under an hour. Peace.